Hey everyone, Brandon Kaiser here, and in this video, I'm going to explain the $1 Million Student Section. Now, we want you to experience the $1 Million Student Section on your campus. So, what is the $1 Million Student Section? Well, it's when your student section is 100% capacity, standing and engaged every game. Now, why this is called the $1 Million Student Section is because when you have a student section that's 100% capacity, standing and engaged every game, we know that that's going to produce a tribe of lifelong fans year after year, and these students are your future donors, they're your season ticket holders. We know that athletics is, quote, the front porch of the university, right? So if we know that they're going to be worth millions of dollars to the university, not only from their tuition, but also through donations and through season ticket sales, then the question is, are we giving them a $1 million experience? And so our goal for clients, our expectation, our standard is 100% capacity, standing and engaged every game. Now, what is the result of the $1 Million Student Section? Right? Everybody, results. Well, there's actually 3 primary results that you're going to experience. The first is attendance, right? Everybody says butts in seats. Well, it's a student section, so yes, we want attendance, but we actually want butts out of seats because we want students standing, right, and engaged. Now, it's one thing to get students there. The second thing, though, is they have to be engaged. So engagement. Right? So the students are there. Now they're in standing and engaged. And then the third result is revenue. The bottom line, right? None of this is possible without revenue. Better facilities, better coaches, right? Again, we want to invest into the student experience so that way we can get more students who are going to be our future donors and alumni. Now, this is the $1 million question, right? We talk to hundreds of people, and everybody wants a student section that's 100% capacity, standing and engaged every single game. Now, some of you might be thinking, hey, that is way too ambitious, that's not possible. Well, it is possible because this is exactly what we did at GCU from scratch. We went from, again, myself and 6 buddies painting our chest to 2,500 students. Every single one is not only there, they're standing. And they're not only standing, they're actually engaging, which means they're cheering, they're chanting, they're participating, they're dancing, they're part of the game. They're not just standing there with their arms crossed, and they're not just sitting down in their seat. They're there, 100% capacity, standing and engaged, and this happens every game. This isn't just the rivalry or the big game. This is the D2 exhibition game. This is the non-conference game. Every single game, it's possible because I've lived it and I built it at GCU. And in fact, I went to a game last weekend, years after I graduated, over 5 years since I left, and what do you know? It's still 100% capacity, standing and engaged every game. So I know it's possible because I've done it, I've built it, I've lived it, so this is our standard and our expectation for clients. The results is, yes, you want attendance, right? You want to get engagement, and you want revenue. That's probably what you're measured by in your job. So this is the $1 million question. Well, how? How do we get there? Well, it's not a quick fix. There's no free promo or giveaway that you could do to get here. It's a process. So now, let me explain this 3-pillared process. Okay. What is the process? Well, the first is what we call top 1% student leaders. Top 1% student leaders. Your student section will only be good as your student leaders. Let me say that again. Your student section will only be as good as your student leaders. So, if you're a Power 5 and you don't have any student leaders, well, your student section might be good, but it's not great because your student section culture is going to be a reflection of your leaders. So, my question to you is, if you're a marketing administrator and you don't have student leaders and you don't think you need student leaders, you're actually limiting and bottlenecking the growth in what is possible for the student section. We're talking about student sections, right? It has to be student-led because this is all a product of culture, and the only people who can build and change culture are student leaders. That's why I was brought on as a student leader at GCU. That's why if you look at the best student sections around the country, they're all student-led, they all have executive boards, everything's organized. And when I say top 1%, I mean your borderline psycho fans who are the biggest fan going crazy at games, but they're also responsible and they take care of business behind the scenes. Because again, it's a lot of work. It is intense. You don't just, post on Instagram or snap your fingers and get a student section. It takes a lot of thought. Now, we had a killer student leadership team, but how has the student section only continued to grow years after I've graduated? That means it wasn't dependent on me. Well, that's where the second part of the process comes in, and that's systems. Now, when I say systems, what do I mean by that? This is a methodical approach. This is, right, inputs, outputs, feedback. What is in place for things to be consistent, right? So what's your Instagram content system? Do we have a systematic guideline on how much we're posting, the type of content? What's your cheering system? Do we know who's starting the cheer? Who's joining? Is it systematic? What is our marketing system? Right? What is our leadership succession planning system? All of these are systems. Pretty much systematic thinking, it's how do all the individual parts interact and affect the organization or the unit as a whole, right? The opposite of systematic thinking is linear thinking of, if we give a free t-shirt, we're going to build a student section. But in fact, there's so many different parts of a student section. There's the student leadership, succession planning, internal goals, external goals, social media, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, marketing plan, flyers, tabling, on campus. What's our culture? What's our values, our goals, our practices in game? What's our pregame event? What are our cheers and chants? What are we doing during timeouts? What are our traditions? What is our revenue model? What is our membership model? So again, this is not just a best practice or a free promo or you give a free t-shirt. Everything has to be systematic. How do all the different elements affect the whole of a student section? Now, these systems have to be implemented and executed by top 1% student leadership. Otherwise, nothing's going to get done, right? So you'll hear us over and over at BFC, the two most important things to a student section. Top 1% student leadership. Why? It's a student section. It has to be student-led. They have to be the craziest, most passionate, and hyped-up fan in venue at games. But they also have to be responsible, take care of business behind the scenes. That means me as a senior leader, student, we're sitting in executive meetings as the face and the voice of the students. I had a leadership team of 9 that we were running leadership meetings every single Monday with my exec leaders, then all the leaders. We were creating our annual marketing and game plan during the summer, and we were the ones as student leaders executing everything. In fact, athletics marketing was not even really part of building or growing the student section. It was on us student leaders. And this is the only way for succession planning and scaling and year after year growth. Why? A lot of turnover in marketing, and students graduate every single year. So what's the system in place so that when leaders do graduate, they're replaced with better leaders, and then those leaders inherit a system where it becomes a well-oiled machine and it's almost plug and play. Now, the third part of the process, often overlooked, is production. Now, what I mean by production is if students go to a game, you have great leaders, you have systems, but then all they hear is PA reads during timeouts, that's going to deflate the energy, right? They're still going to go to a game without the production element, and it's still going to be a basketball game that's about the athletes and it's about the sponsors. It's not about them. The only way to get to 100% capacity, standing and engaged every game in the $1 million student section, which will produce millions of dollars to your university year after year, is to make the students part of the show and make their experience the number one priority. Because if you have a student section that is engaged, it's mesmerizing, and that's going to increase your season ticket holders, your season ticket sales, and your donors and your season ticket holders are going to be happy. If you ask any donor, season ticket holder, or alumni, hey, do you want to see a student section that's packed and rowdy and part of the show? Every single one will say yes. So without the production piece, then we just fall back on, all right, let's do another encore promo and half-court shot and PA read. That sucks the energy out of the students. We want the students to be part of the show, which means when the game is not being played, the eyeballs in the arena or in the stadium are on the student section because it's fun, it's mesmerizing, and that's what people want to see at a college or high school athletic event is the student section. So we need to produce and program games with the intent to get students there and to engage them, because we know that's going to then drive revenue. But if you just have the production and you have the coolest lasers and music and sound system, but you don't have systems or leaders, then you're just going to be doing that with no student section. Again, but if you have leadership and systems and you have the students there, but it's just a bunch of PA reads, you don't have that production element, now you're not fully activating and engaging those students, so they're going to just stand there like this, or they're going to sit down during a timeout, rather than being part of the show. So that is where we at BFC, every little minute from the time doors open through the end of the game, pregame, the whole goal is to build momentum. And then through the game, it's to sustain that energy. We need to be strategic to engage these students where they become part of the show. Now, again, if you take away production, you're not going to get to 100% capacity standing and engaged every game. If you take away systems, cool, you might get some momentum, but it's not going to last. You're not going to get every game year after year. And if you take away the top 1% student leaders, frankly, you don't have much of a student section or an organization that's going to last. My bet then is that the student section is dependent either on the success of the team, a tradition, or you as the athletic administrator. So if any of those things changes, the student section is going to go on a steady decline. So we have to have student leaders. Okay? Now, what are the primary two benefits of all of this? Why should a school invest in their student section? What is the benefit of a student section that's 100% capacity, standing and engaged every game? There's two. Student experience, competitive advantage. And everyone at a university, their number one priority should be the student experience, because it's all about the students. It's actually not about me. It's not about Biggest Fan Consulting. It's not about you and your job. It's not about the logo on your polo. It's not about the athletic department. It's about the students, because it's their experience that they're either being invested into and they're being provided an unbelievable experience, or they're being stifled because their experience is not the number one priority at athletic events. So they're the ones that are actually, they're missing out, right? So we're actually limiting their experience if we're not prioritizing trying to implement this on campus. Now, the second thing is we work in athletics, right? Competitive advantage, home court advantage. So athletes play better in front of home crowds, and a loud home crowd, a student section that's 100% capacity, standing and engaged, the other team is not going to be able to, nor should they think during a timeout. So by investing in this, in the student section, you're giving your students you're enhancing their student experience, which hopefully is the number one priority on any campus. And you're also giving yourself a competitive advantage, which hopefully is a top priority for any athletic department. But again, why does this not happen? Because there's so much turnover, right? So I just have an honest question is, how much do we really care about the students? That's all we care about at Biggest Fan Consulting. We get up every single day. The only thing we care about is providing the students on every campus an amazing experience, because not only do they want it, they deserve it. The second thing is your athletes. We say the student athlete experience. Well, are we giving them a competitive advantage? Right? Are they going to enter the transfer portal because a different university, a competitor, a peer institution actually has a better student section? So again, let me walk you through this. This is the $1 million student section, because it's going to produce millions of dollars, because it's going to produce a tribe of lifelong fans on demand year after year, who are your future donors and season ticket holders. Students are going to start flocking to your university, so that's tuition revenue. The expectation and the standard, what a $1 million student section is a student section that's 100% capacity, standing and engaged every game. I know it's possible because I've built it and I've lived it. The result, right, what you probably get measured by is attendance, engagement. It's one thing to get them there. Are they standing and engaged and cheering and chanting every possession? And then that's going to drive revenue, right? And that's not just long-term revenue. That's also short-term revenue. Your student section is a huge asset. You are sitting on a gold mine that can produce direct revenue. And the only way to get to these results is this process, which is top 1% student leaders. If you do not have student leaders, you are limiting and bottlenecking your student section. It has to be student run. Those leaders need to learn and implement systems for year after year growth. So whether you or a student leader leaves, whether you leave or a student leader graduates, year after year success, right? We want to simplify, plug and play, make it a systematic approach and model. And then production. We have to feature students as the #1 priority and make them part of the show. That's only going to increase the entertainment value of your games, which again is going to drive more revenue. And then the benefits of all of this, student experience and competitive advantage. And that is exactly what we do at Biggest Fan Consulting, is help your campus experience the $1 million student section, because what we do is we help you implement this process. We help you find, evaluate, and train your top 1% student leaders. We help both the administrators and the student leaders on your campus implement the systems, and we take a look at your production and turn games into social events students want to be part of. So that is the $1 million student section. Really think hard and evaluate if you're implementing this process, or if you're just focusing on the promo, the graphic, the free shirt, incentive program. Great tools, they just don't build culture.